Happy Tuesday, Taco Tuesday with a twist tonight, right? Top Politics Tuesday. So, hey, everybody, I am KNB. Kim is whatever you want to call me. And then I'll let Mr. introduce himself.
Hi, I'm John Ivey with the Voter Access Project. As anybody who's seen us for the last couple of weeks would know, I am the sideshow here to Kim's lead.
Not at all. Not at all.
I for anybody that's just tuning in for the first time, what you don't know is that Kim has put together a great presentation for you, why they don't want you to vote, which is a series of live streams that we're doing every Tuesday from a couple weeks ago till mid-October, right?
Yeah,
when we start.
This is our last live.
Yeah, and so
I'm going to cut him off on intentional today. If you watched the live streams for the last 2 weeks, you know I constantly cut John off. Most of the time it's unintentional, but this time it was intentional because he is being very humble. John is awesome. This is a two-way presentation, two-way work. I had this broad idea, and I was fortunate enough to connect with Mr. Ivy. I'm going to call him Mr. Ivy, and he helped me execute my dream to connect with you guys all and give you guys some information about the just importance and significance of voting. And so we have a great agenda for you guys tonight. But before we get started, we kind of wanted to give you a recap and just a reminder, because today is National Register to Vote Day. And I swear that is a made up holiday, but I like it. It is my favorite made up holiday ever. So we just want to remind you to register to vote. And we also want to remind you to take the census. If you've lost your little census card, no worries. Go to 2020census.gov and get the ball rolling. We talked a little bit, and John gave you guys a great explanation of why taking the census is so important. So, John, I'll let you lead and just remind these folks in 30 seconds why the census matters.
Okay, well, the census matters primarily because it's how our government knows where our population is and how many people there are. It also details a lot of other things that help us decide how to spend our tax dollars, how many representatives each group of people should get in Congress and in the state houses. So being counted in the census means that you're getting your community possibly thousands and thousands of dollars in federal and state funding. It means that you're making our democracy work better and possibly getting better representation for your community. And so not getting counted, forgetting to do the census, or just putting it off until it's too late means that we're missing out on that money and on that representation.
Yes. Come on now. We do not want to miss out on money. We need money for our communities, right? And this is something that we can do for free, right? Our time is very precious, but taking the time to complete the census not only has a direct impact on you, but you're helping your community, right? And so, one thing I wanted to say very briefly is you might ask, well, we talked about this on the first live. Why do you guys keep talking about it? Because it is important. And because right now there are things that are going on that might end the census early. And so it is extremely important that everyone is being counted and that you're getting your census completed, that you're making sure your family members, your friends, your coworkers, are getting this information completed. And what I like to tell people is that once you have the knowledge, you are responsible to share that knowledge. So if you are watching and you now understand, wow, I didn't know that. Have you told anyone? Have you checked in on anyone? That is what we're going to task you guys tonight. So I am going to be on my soapbox a little less tonight. And so I will, because John's going to do the majority of the talking later, because I am actually, believe it or not feeling well. So if my energy is at like a 5 instead of a 20, please know I'm so excited to be here with you guys tonight. I'm just feeling like not great. So just a couple of other reminders. Ballots are scheduled to be mailed on October 5th. And so you should anticipate receiving your ballot maybe the 7th or the 8th if you are a registered voter. No worries if you are not registered to vote. The deadline is October 19th. For any reasons, if you don't receive your ballot on that first week, no worries. There are plenty of ways for you to get a replacement ballot that we'll talk a little bit more about later. We all know the big day is November 3rd, Election Day. That's going to be your last day to vote. You can walk your ballot into several locations. For my folks that are local in Lodi, you're going to have multiple locations where you can start dropping off your ballot as early as October 31st. Now, mind you, you can mail your ballot and complete your ballot as soon as you get it, but there'll be physical locations for you to kind of take your ballot in within Lodi on starting October 31st. So make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure your ballot is correct. Yeah, there's no excuses, y'all. No excuses about that. Next.
Yep. All right, so the next thing we wanted to talk about was something that's in the news right now. It's going to be in the news for the next several weeks. Is the United States Supreme Court. Just this past week, very very tragically, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, and that has opened up a vacancy on the Supreme Court that is going to be pretty contentious as a political thing. Over the next couple of months. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about what the Supreme Court is, why this is important news, and kind of give you a little basis for when you see it on the news and they start talking about it, what they're talking about. And so on a basic level, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the United States. That's why it's called the Supreme Court. Below it, we find the state Supreme Courts in each of the states and the lower courts from the state courts, and we have the federal appellate courts, which are the ones made at the federal level, but they're made throughout the United States as well. So we have courts, both state courts and federal courts, spread out throughout the United States. But they all basically lead up to the Supreme Court. Any criminal case that you have in a state or federal court, at some point it could be appealable to the Supreme Court. But the reason why we really focus on the Supreme Court is because they are also the court that makes major decisions about the constitutionality of laws, meaning whether or not the government is violating the Constitution with a law that they've passed or an action that they've taken. And this has had some profound impacts on our society and on people's civil rights. The major cases, I could think of a lot of major cases, but you think of like Loving v. Virginia, where the state of Virginia was sued because it had laws stopping different races from being able to marry each other, which is not ancient history. This was in the 60s. And the Supreme Court ruled that those laws were unconstitutional, that they violated our constitutional rights to have laws like that. More recently, they've passed laws that, or they've made decisions that shut down laws stopping same-sex marriages from happening. We are currently throughout the United States debating abortion rights again. And one of the fears is right now that the Supreme Court going forward might choose to overturn Roe v. Wade, and which affects the right of every woman in America to seek and have an abortion. And so I wanted to say these topics are kind of the things that you'll hear about in the news. Kim, did you want to say something about the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I think that it's important. I always want to tell the audience that, no question is off limits. And I want to go back and just make sure, when we're talking about these things, big things like the Constitution, do you guys understand, like, if I was to ask you, what are the first, what are the first three amendments in the Constitution? Does anyone know? And I think that it's important that we understand the things that govern us, right? And so if you have this body, the Supreme Court, that are making decisions to deem if something is unconstitutional or not, we as constituents and as individuals that are engaging in democracy really should make an effort to understand what is the Constitution? What is it founded on? And so I would encourage you all, the constitutional law was actually one of my favorite classes in undergrad, which is crazy because, but anyway, and that's not the purpose of our conversation tonight, but we do think that it's important because our goal here is to help empower you all to make informed decisions. And so I would tell you, if you have questions about the Constitution and amendment, the difference of a state law versus a federal law, right? That is an important distinction. And I will give you a brief example. California has specific laws that govern and regulate teachers here that maybe Washington doesn't have, right? So that's a California state law. Whereas there are federal laws that impact us all. Another example is marijuana, right? Marijuana is legal in states, right? It's legal in California. It's legal in Oregon. It's legal in Nevada. It's legal in Maryland. Why do I know all the states that have legal pot? Because of my business and my industry, because I support the cannabis industry. But cannabis is still illegal at the federal level, right? And so one day in a fun video, John and I will talk about that all. But just to like John said, I'm going to echo what he said again. We just want to give you knowledge so when you see things on TV that you understand the impact that it's going to have to you directly. And I think it's really important for anyone to pay attention to what's going on, because decisions that are made are going to affect you, affect your children and your grandchildren. And so really kind of just take some time and figure out what's going on and ask lots of questions. So that's all I got on the Supreme Court. It's one of my favorite things, actually. It was one of my favorite topics.
Yeah. And so the Supreme Court's really important. It's not overly complicated how it works, but that's a good summary for us of its importance. And one other thing to keep in mind about what's going on right now is how this vacancy should work. So the Supreme Court's actually these 9 people. Here's a picture of the latest court. Justice Ginsburg is right there in the lower row. She's passed away, which leaves a vacancy on the court. And that vacancy is filled when the president nominates someone, and then the U.S. Senate votes to place that person on the court, to appoint them, to confirm them. And so that's what you'll hear going forward, is the president right now has a choice to nominate someone, to wait, to pick really whoever he wants, and then the Senate is the one that decides to accept that nomination or not. And so that's just what's going to be going on the court. But
one moment, John. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I see there's some of you guys on, and if you have questions, I see someone said you're both amazing and appreciate it. We thank you, Facebook user. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell me your name. But does anyone, if you have any questions about the Supreme Court, I'm keeping my eye on the chat. So please do not hesitate to ask a question. Any question, we're here for you. This is always a 3-way conversation between John, myself, and you, the audience. You matter, and we are here to educate and empower you.
Yeah, and definitely, that's one of the reasons we're doing this live, is so that we can interact and answer questions and respond as we go. And so this week we're continuing our series of What's on the Ballot. Real quick, last week we went over the city council members and school board trustees. We only went over a little bit the school board trustees, but we did a pretty deep dive into how the city council works, what it's responsible for, budgets, personnel decisions, and the laws throughout the city. School boards operate pretty much the same way. They're responsible for rules at the schools, for decisions about the schools, hiring and firing of personnel, and budgets. So school board, very much important, just like the city council is, and it's all kind of voted on locally, controlled locally. So that's where you can have a lot of impact, is knowing, who's on the ballot for those positions, and taking an interest in making sure that they're doing a good job. Moving on to today, we're going to be covering another level of our government, which is the state level, the state legislature, which is made up of the state assembly and the state senate. Now, earlier I talked about the U.S. Senate. The United States Senate gets to decide whether or not to approve the president's nomination for the Supreme Court. That Senate is the United States Senate. They go to Washington, D.C., 2 people from each state, whether or not you're a state from California, 40 million people, or the state of Wyoming with 500,000 people. You just each get to send 2 people to Washington to sit on the Senate. Our state Senate doesn't quite work that way. It is proportional. We have 40 senators from districts throughout California. Each one of them represents about 1 million people, and we send them all to Sacramento to make laws. The Assembly is basically the same thing, except for it has twice as many people. It's got 80 people, and they each represent about 500,000 citizens and non-citizens, 500,000 people. And they also get sent to Sacramento to make laws. And so these 2 bodies kind of operate almost identically in their processes and their procedures and the powers that they have. It's just that we have these 2 different houses of the legislature, so that we can get some kind of back and forth between people that are elected every 2 years, which is the assembly members. So if you're unhappy with what an assembly member does, you can get rid of them basically right away. And then we have the state senators, which are a little less responsive to the public opinion, is the theory, is that they have a little more room to do things differently than what might be in the spur of the moment for those 2-year people. Whether or not that works out that way, that's the general theory, is that we have one body that's going to go a little bit slower. They get elected a little less often, have to run for office and stuff like that, and one that goes a little quicker. But other than that, they work basically the same.
And so, John, let me interject here. And so I want to connect some dots for the audience. And I want to say, if you were wondering, John laid it out for us again, but I like to kind of be redundant sometimes, because I really think it's important that we understand this. And so I like to kind of tell a story, right? So if I said the name Kamala Harris, I would assume that most of you guys understand that she's a senator, right? Is there a reason state senators have 4-year terms as opposed to 2? Yes. And we will. Good question, Jarrett. And I know the answer, but sometimes I like to pick on John because I feel like he can explain it more concisely than I am. So I'm going to pass that to John in just a few moments. But I want to kind of go back to the difference between things impacting you at a federal level and then a state level. And so when we're talking about these assembly members and state senators, they are beholden to citizens, not just citizens, residents of California, right? And I think one thing that's really important that John mentioned is that, if you have the U.S. senators at a federal level, right, no matter how large your state is, based on the Constitution, each state only gets 2 senators, right? And so, but here you're having to have state senators and assembly members represent the concerns of a significantly larger demographic of people. So again, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that, your U.S. senators are representing not only you in California, but the laws and the decisions they make impact all people that reside in the United States. So again, maybe you guys already knew that, and that's great, but I'm going to tell you the truth. When I first started down this like politicking journey, I was so confused. I was like, wait, we have state senators and we have US senators, and like I don't understand like what they do. So I just want to make sure everyone does. So I'm going to hand it over to John because Jared asked a question, and John, you're it. I'm going to tag you.
Well, there's a few different ways to answer this. The general thing, and I was kind of talking on this, is that state senators are elected every 4 years instead of every 2, because the idea is that we want a body that has more consistency, that they're not always having to run for re-election, that they don't have to, be always on the pulse of the population. Maybe the people have lost their minds for an election and want to go and do something radical. The Senate is meant to kind of be a buffer from that, to where it takes longer for change to trickle through the Senate, just because they have longer terms. So that's one general idea behind it. Now, whether or not that's something everybody agrees to or something that we should keep, it also is just kind of the traditional role of things. And one thing that's majorly changed recently is now in both houses, both the Assembly members and the Senate, the members can only serve for 12 years total, combined in either house, that they can only be in the legislature for 12 years. And so for Assembly members, that means that they can run for election 6 times or 5 times, 6 times, or they could go to or if they're a state senator, they can be a state senator 3 times. What we might see less often now is people going from the Assembly to the Senate, just because they'll probably be out of time by the time they get there. They won't be able to be reelected much. So it's very interesting, the modern now, these terms and term limits and stuff like that. Some of the old ways of thinking about it might not even apply anymore.
And one thing I just want to add quickly, when I like when John makes good points and I get to come behind him and like punt. I don't know, but that was a horrible analogy. But if you think about it this way, also, Jared, we've elected this body to make laws, right? And if they, like John was saying, if they keep kind of having to be reelected, running for office, campaigning, right? I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but how much time are they truly having to enact legislation? Because you would be so surprised at the red tape and the bureaucracy and how long it takes to get things done. So just imagine that if we had an election every year, or every 2 years, when they have those big tasks that they're having to get accomplished. So thanks for letting me add a little sugar to your salt. Yeah. My analogies are terrible tonight. But we laugh. We can laugh when we talk politics, right?
Yes,
okay.
Definitely. Because most of the time it is funny. And so I put up this map. This is the map of the Assembly districts, but honestly, unless you have it up on a TV screen or something, you probably can't see it too well. There's just 80 districts. So as you can probably make out, Northern California has like these huge districts covering huge parts of the state. And that's because very few people live there. Whereas Los Angeles County, they have to zoom in and blow up because there's so many districts within, a drive of each other. And so I wanted to show you that. And I also wanted to show you the state senator map, which is very similar to the assembly member map, except for there's half as many districts. And so talking specifically about what do the state senators and the state assembly members do themselves is I wanted to talk about 2 different things. First, I wanted to talk about something called constituent services, which is to say that each one of these members, each one of these 120 people, has an office in their home district, where you can go, or you can call them, or you can email them, and they will help you. And what do I mean by help you? I mean, you have a question about the government, you have a problem in the government, you have a problem in general. They are there to try and make your problem go away, to help you out. And so it's very useful to know who your legislator is, or to look up their office, because this is true wherever you are, is that they get a budget for staffing, and they get to have people there that are just there to try and make you a happy voter.
And John, I'm the storyteller sometimes. So let's talk about very quickly, because I want to be respectful of time, a real life example of a constituent getting help from the assembly member. So a lot of you guys know I live in Lodi, and I'm sure a lot of you guys realize that when we unfortunately were hit with the global pandemic, a lot of people were placed on unemployment. And I'm not going to give you this big lesson, but one of the most important things that happened is that the senators and our president decided that they were going to give an extension of unemployment benefits to help people that normally didn't qualify. Why do I tell you this? Because I am involved, and I understand law, and I keep track of everything that was going on. So I had a friend that applied for unemployment at the beginning of the global pandemic in March 11th, you guys. And make a long story short, that friend still had not received their unemployment. But because I understood the responsibilities of our Congress and our Senate Assembly members, our California State Assembly members, I was able to reach out to the office and request assistance. And so normally, our congressperson handles unemployment claims, but because the California Unemployment Department was so impacted and inundated with claims, they also allowed the assembly member's office to take and assist. So I was able to reach out to get help. And I think it's important to say that actually a candidate for city council who actually works in our assembly member's office, Mike Huthey, actually was able to take our situation, contact the employment development department to get the ball running. Now, I will tell you guys what, it is September 22nd, and my friend still has not received a dime, but we at least have confirmation that he has been approved and everything is on its way. Now, I just want to why did I tell you guys that big, long story, and what does that have to do with you? Because you should know, like John is saying, that if you need help for something within the structure of our government, our state government, the elected officials are there to help you. Also, there's things like, let's just say we're not in a global pandemic and you're going to Washington and you want to have a tour of the White House. Did you know that your congressman could actually help you potentially get that scheduled? Let's just say you want to get a flag and you want to have a flag at someone's service that has passed away. You can contact your congressman. And so we are saying these things, to let you know that you have this power too. But if you don't understand how they work for you, then you are not maybe potentially tapping into resources, right? And so I wanted to share that story with you. And I have lots of other stories where I have reached out to congressmen or people that are on specific committees to get assistance. But, I kind of had the privilege of knowing that was their responsibility, right? And knowing how to hold them accountable. And we want that for you too. Thanks, John.
Yeah. And I mean, you nailed it, especially talking about the different levels of this, the state assembly member, the U.S. congressman, and how all of these offices are set up. And one of their duties is to try and take care of their constituents. And so one thing real quick I wanted to show everybody is, like, if you're like, oh, well, I actually don't even know who my congressman or anything like that is, you can just Google my representatives. and you'll get the House, that's the U.S. Congress. You can go to our California Secretary of State website. We'll have the different offices that are for you. State Senate and State Assembly is a good place. And you can just put in your address, and it'll tell you who's currently in that office and how to contact them and information about it. Let me see if I can just pull up. And also just go to the map and start clicking. See random people. This is Assemblymember Eggman's site. And you just get all kinds of information about them. So the other side, and this is more their main gig, is to write and pass laws. So they do constituent services, and they all do it. And I would actually recommend that you should judge people on how well they run their offices and how well they do the constituent services.
Yes.
And make decisions on that, because if they're jerks, if they do a bad job, if the people they hire are bad at their jobs and stuff like that, we should hold them accountable for that. And we should celebrate when they do a good job. As that everybody likes people who do a good job and are friendly and are nice and responsive to us. So the other side of the coin, the other thing they're responsible for, making the laws, that is also very important. You should hold people accountable for it. And in some ways, it might be more important. It might not matter how nice somebody is if they're passing laws that end up hurting you. And so I wanted to kind of talk about something here in California called Ledge Info. So this is and you just Google Ledge Info. It'll be the first link, California Legislative Information. And so this is the official California site for our state legislature, which legislature is just the people who write laws. It's our state assembly and our state Senate. When we refer to them together, we just call them the legislature. And on this site, you'll get a lot of information. The very first thing you'll see over here is today's schedule, which right now there's not a lot going on because they're in recess. They're done for the year, basically. They're all off running for re-election right now. but any day that when they're in session, you can come right to this website and you can see what their plan is for the day. And you'll see there's updates for both the Assembly and the Senate where they tell you things. And there's something called the Daily File, which tells you what they've done for the day. And then there's much more useful to us. There's videos. So each of the Senate and the Assembly members, they all sit on committees. So everything's done by committee. When they write laws and pass laws, they all get together in small groups first and decide if those are good laws. They do amendments on the laws. They fix up the bills before moving them on. And so you can go and watch that process, or you can stay home because it's pandemic, or anytime you don't feel like going to Sacramento, and you can watch it online. You can just watch them talk about the laws. People will come and give testimony. It works very similar to a city council meeting. It's just at that state level. And so there's a lot of interesting things there. But one thing I want to talk about is that I wanted to show you bill information. So a bill is what we call it before it becomes a law. It's a bill. Schoolhouse Rock has a great video on how a bill becomes a law. And it's basically that method is that the lawmaker, the legislature, the assembly member, the senator, they write the law. Well, they actually have lawyers that write the law. And then they debate it and they vote on it. And if it passes and it's signed by the governor, then it becomes a law. But you can go onto this site and see all the things that almost became laws, or all the things that did become laws. And so what I'm going to do real quick is that I'm going to pick our time frame, which we're going to do the 2019 to 2020 session year. Now, these session years go in 2-year increments. The assembly's elected every 2 years, right? So every 2 years we have a new legislature, even if they're the same people. It's a brand new one. They got to start all over. and started up. So we keep track of things in that 2-year increment. And right now we're coming at the close of 2 years. And then we're going to pick one of the authors. So these are all of the senators and assembly members in a nice scroll down box. Oh, I don't know if it's showing up. It's not showing up. That's lovely. But I'm going to pick one. I'm going to pick Jim Cooper.
And who is Jim Cooper, John?
He's the assembly member. I actually don't remember where his district ends, but I know it's in Elk Grove and on south.
Okay, so I'm going to connect the dots for our audience, because Jim Cooper is someone that when you look on your ballot, you're going to see his name. He is running for office in our district, and so you will be voting on him. I am not here to, sway you either way, but what we want you, when we're talking about these things, it's always from a place of why should you care, right? And so I don't know if you are guilty of this. I am, and I'm totally going to confess, looking at my ballot going, any, mini, miny, mo. Oh, his name sounds, that sounds cool. Yep. Okay. That person is going to, he sounds cool. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's Lodi as well. So he's going to be on the ballot. And so what we want you to understand is when you're voting, right? And when people are not voting, right? These are the types of decisions that are being made that are going to impact you. And so when we go back to that shocking, and it still makes me queasy, that statistic that John shared in our very first live, that roughly estimates 22% of registered, and available voters are the ones showing up to the polls, right? So maybe you don't want Jim Cooper, right? But that those 22% of people are making decisions, and Jim is writing laws that are going to impact your life. Also, you have a candidate running for District 5 that works at Jim Cooper's office, right? So you should understand what that candidate has done, what he's saying that he's done that's helped you as a resident of Lodi. And so I'm going to stop there, but I really want you guys to understand that these things are going to be on your ballot, and you are going to be deciding if this incumbent returns. John, go ahead.
Yeah. And so here I just wanted to, so I picked Cooper out of the box, and I hit search, and this will show me all of the bills, and there's 38 of them, that he has written in the last 2 years himself. So this is not all the bills that he has voted on. There's a lot more of those. So this isn't everything that he's done, but these are the things that came directly out of his office with his name on it. And looking at this, what it shows you is that, and we talk about this all the time, is that each potential law, each bill gets a number. And the AB, like in AB1, stands for Assembly Bill, because Mr. Cooper is an Assembly member. If he was a senator, then it would be a Senate bill. It would be SB. So AB1 is the first Assembly bill out of the Assembly back in 2019, because that was the start of the 2-year session. And this will tell you the subject of it, which is kind of a very general subject. It won't tell you much about what's inside, but this one tells you it's about youth athletics, California Youth Football Act. And then we see the authors, Jim Cooper, and then the status here is chaptered. And Kim, do you know what chaptered means?
I think I do, but I'm too afraid to be wrong, so I'm gonna.
Oh, you gotta guess. Everybody else is gonna guess. Everybody else is.
No, but I don't want to guess.
Okay, in this context, chaptered means that it is a law now. It has been passed into law. And the reason why we use the word did you know it?
I did, but I don't know why we use the word chapter. So
let me tell you.
I'm honestly, because I believe in keeping it real, you guys. So I'm like sweating because I'm like, I thought that's what it meant, but I was too afraid if I was wrong. And I don't know why it's called chapter though.
Yeah,
I don't know that.
the reason it's called chaptered is because we actually put these laws written down into a book. So, so at the end of the 2 years, they'll print a book of this of the laws that have been passed in the last 2 years, and one of the chapters will be this book. A chapter can take up less than a page. It can take up several pages, but each law is its own chapter. And so when it gets put into the book, that's when it's called a chapter. Before that, it's not chaptered. It's other lingo, and we'll scroll down and look at some of the lingo of what its status could be. But chaptered is because there's an actual book, and it goes to all the state.
I'm going to be honest with the audience. So I got 1 out of 3. I knew that it became a law. I had no idea why it was called chapter, and I had no idea that it was put into a book. So see, I mean, learning something new every day, and I'm not afraid to admit that I did not know that. But yeah, chapter, book, duh. But that's another conversation.
Yeah, that's why it's a fun word to me. It's because, especially until you're shown the book, you don't know that that's what happens to laws. Bills get written down into this long book. And so some of the other statuses that you'll see on here is that it died in assembly appropriations. This means that they decided it cost too much money. So even though people supported it, they were like, that costs too much money. And so they just let it die, which is just a word for saying that they didn't vote no on it. It's not like everybody got together and there was a big vote and they voted no. It's that they just stopped. They just were like, we're just going to put that aside. And so it dies.
My old professor, political Dr. Stephen Ruth, if he's watching this, he taught us that committees are the graveyards of bills, because if they're in committees for too long, they're gonna die. They're not usually coming out. And sometimes they get tied up and then they just die. Graveyard is what Dr. Ruth would call them.
Yeah, and to the Facebook user asking, did it not get out of committee? In the case of this bill for the Adolescent Cannabis Prevention Fund, it made it out of one of the committees. It just, because it costs money, it went to the Appropriations Committee, which is kind of a budget committee. They decide all things that cost money have to go to them. If a bill doesn't cost anything to the state, then it can go past them without getting voted on, but else it goes to the Appropriations Committee, and it never made it out of that committee. And I'll talk about making it out of other committees, and we'll look at the history of it. I wanted to real quick. Really, anything on this list that doesn't say chaptered has died. Even if it doesn't say died, it's done, because they're done. They're on vacation. They are not in the office. They are not passing any more laws this year. All the laws that are still waiting to be finished up are on the governor's desk, just waiting for him to sign it. And so all of these bills that say it's in Senate transportation, so there's a transportation committee in the Senate. This tells us that it actually passed out of the assembly. So Jim Cooper's in the assembly. He got it through the transportation committee in the assembly. He got it through appropriations. It went to the floor, to the entire assembly. They voted on this bill. They passed it. Then it went to the Senate, and it went into the Senate Transportation Committee. And then that was it. They just stopped.
It's a wrap.
And so all of that work, all of that voting, all of that support, and it just died quietly. And this was air quality improvement. Who needs that? Who knows what that was about? A clean vehicle. So all of this is really interesting stuff too. So you can go down and you'll see lots of different things. Here's one that actually made it through both houses. So it made it through the assembly, made it through the Senate, all those processes and stuff like that, and it went to the governor, and the governor said no. He vetoed it. And so let's look at that real quick. So AB 346, workers' compensation, leave of absences. And so we can click on it, and it will pull up this. which is a pretty busy screen, but if we scroll down, we want to know what it is. We can go all the way down to here, and it'll tell us a long spiel about what the law was before it started to give us some background. And then it'll start saying this bill. And this bill would add police officers employed by a school district, a county office of education, or community college district to the list of public employees entitled to a leave of absence without loss of salary in lieu of temporary disability payments while disabled by injury or illness arising out of and in the course of employment. I don't know what a lot of that means, but it sounds like it was giving a benefit to police officers that other workers for the state have. And so this passed both houses and went up to the governor, and the governor vetoed it.
That's it. From it, anyway, we won't even get it down that road. But yeah, that's essentially what it means, because a lot of times people are not given certain protections for workman's comp, and so we won't talk about that tonight. But
the particulars on all of these things are really interesting, and we could do a deep dive on every single line of all of this stuff. And so that's one of the things that you should use these tools for, is to find a topic that you're interested in and see what's going on with it. This has a lot of information. There's a bill analysis where they explain each law to you in great detail. There's, I think, the status. Yeah, we can read what Governor Newsom said as he decided not to pass this law. Pretty much said it would cost too much money. That was the gist of why he said no to this particular law. And so you can see all of this information, and you can see the type of laws and the types of things people vote for. You can see all the people who voted yes to this. It was basically unanimous. There wasn't anybody that voted no on any of on this bill. And so you get all of this information about what's going on in the legislature, and you can take as much of it as you want. You can dive into detailed things. There's a search for text search. So if there's a topic that you're interested in and you want to just see if there's anything in the works right now or in the past, you can look for it. And so this is a great site. This is just Ledge Info or California Legislature. Any of those Googles will get you there. And so I just really wanted to show this site to you if you haven't seen it before. Which, Kim, have you seen this site before?
Yes. Poli-sci. Just to be honest, I voted for probably about 10 years before I even knew what this site meant. Because I studied political science, that's where I learned about all of these great tools, which only enhance my interest. So for like we talked about earlier, for years I voted and I didn't do any research. I didn't understand what each person was responsible for. I just kind of did the any, mini, miny, mo, or, overheard someone saying that's who they were going to vote for. And I said, oh, okay, that sounds good. And so the one thing I wanted to say, John, is that, I know, to our audience, right, we don't expect you guys to go and read all the bills, which it's kind of fun. I mean, I don't know, but that's just me. But we don't expect that of you. But again, I think that it's just extremely important. For me, this is kind of me being on my soapbox. I'll tell you, right? When we think about these elected officials, right, and we think about what things in our society matter to us. And when you ask yourself, what are your personal moral values and beliefs, right? You want to elect officials that are going to honor that. And I, for one, right, when I see bills that have been unanimous in both houses pass and then are vetoed, that is a gut punch, because I know how hard it is to get there, right? And so maybe if the citizens were more educated, right, they could be advocating for our governor to maybe to support certain legislation that our elected officials are trying to enact, right? But if we are not informed about what's going on at a local level, right? Did you guys know that bill was vetoed, right? I mean, those are the kind of decisions that are being executed outside of you when you're not voting. So, yeah, no problem. I wasn't really aware that this website either. Thanks for bringing attention to it. No problem. I mean, that's what we're here for. We want you to know all of the tools that are available to you as a citizen in this country, right? And what things you can be more knowledgeable about. Anyway, so it's 8:06, right? And we like politics. We like talking to you guys. So we go over. I know John has a couple of more things that we wanted to talk about. And I always want to make sure we give space for questions. So John, I'm going to hand it over to you and then try my best to not say anything and let you wrap up so we can get questions.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're about ready for questions now. I wanted to talk a little bit about, on every 2 years, we're picking an assembly member. In one of these lives going forward, we're going to talk about the U.S. Congress. Every 2 years, we're picking a member of the House of Representatives, which is sort of like the assembly, but for the whole of the United States. And so getting to know like who your representative is, and I know I showed you just Google who's my representative and you'll get to those things, and really having that knowledge is very useful. It's good to share. I would suggest that anybody that's on here right now, if you're on Facebook, you have an entire random list of friends that you could message right now and say, hey, did you remember to update your voter registration? Go to vote.ca.gov. Hey, do you know who your representative is? Because mine is this guy, and I love him, or I hate him, or I think this should be different, or the governor really shouldn't have vetoed that bill that I loved, or the governor definitely should have vetoed that bill that I hate. And to be able to express that, I think is very powerful to us, not just because we want to see change, but because we want to make those connections in our community and be able to talk about this stuff on a level of where it matters to us. So that's why I wanted to show everybody the how to get on the website and to look up this information, because you'll find things that you personally care about and that you and your community and your friends and your family care about.
And John, can I add one thing? I think it's also extremely important, when we talk about social media, I want to talk about the responsibility we have to fact check and to look at appropriate sources for information before we just hit share, right? We live in an age of misinformation for real. And, the information, the correct information is right here. It's accessible to us, so we can dive in deep before we just mindlessly share some meme that is totally misrepresented a bill, misrepresented a situation. So that is not just like about what we're talking about tonight. I strongly encourage all of you guys that are taking the time, you're showing up with us every Tuesday, to make sure you can make sure you're fact checking, make sure you're going to credible sources and reading the right information. And if you don't like to read, that's okay. I am an auditory learner. I will tell you guys right now, I don't do well in retaining information from reading, so I have to hear it. So I listen to nonpartisan. Well, anyway, we'll talk about that later. But the important thing, like John is saying, please share this information, but please share accurate information. Please share credible, non-biased sites. Both sides, the left and the right, put out their own materials and propaganda that will promote their issues, and you want to kind of fact check them both, right? No matter what you believe, make sure that you are listening to both sides, or you're going to a credible source for information.
Yeah, and whatever you're doing, whether it's something that we've covered or are planning to cover or anything like that, if you're interested in something and knowing about it and hearing opinions, you can contact us, him or me. Like we will talk to you about anything. I geek out on the details, like the legislation and stuff. If you're like, what does this bill do? I will break it down for you because it is fun for me to do. So you definitely have our contact information and things like. In fact, let me put some contact. I have a little.
And you know what? Not only we do it, we get excited about it. We like it. Like we like smile. Like even though I don't feel good, like see how I'm so happy. John's like we're just like it's ridiculous, but we really like this stuff. You know, it's great. John, we're so fun, aren't we? We're so fun. Oh, yeah, John has his. Go ahead, John. Tell me. No.
I have this up.
So we do you guys call? I'm like so old. It's like a plug. Like so. Here's our email us at info@voteraccess.org. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm so
sorry.
Not sorry.
Do people even use email anymore? Is this still a thing?
I don't know, John. The Slack is like the new. Everyone's on.
Do we have anybody under like 30 watching the stream?
Tell us if we're relevant. Like, do we need to just do a TikTok video?
Oh, I don't even know how to do it.
So anyway, okay, guys, we're having too much fun here. I hope we're not like the awkward grandparents who think they're fun and then they're really not fun. But I think we're fun. So please email us, and no matter what, like I know that a lot of our data was for Lodi specifically, but if you live in California, anywhere in California, please. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. Even if you live in another state, it might take us a little time to maybe John will be quicker than I am to do a little bit of research, but email us. We are here for you. You make learning about voting fun. That is the best thing that you could say to us because that's what it's about. I love you guys. I really do. And I want you guys to feel knowledgeable. I want you, tonight when you go, you log off, you pull up your ballot on Voters Edge and you say, oh, that's the city council person. That is the person that is, making a budget for us. That's the person that's passing laws. Trustee. Oh, wait, I just thought that was a person who works in the bank. It's actually someone who is making decisions for our education system. And some of those decisions are financial, but it's a lot more. And so that's why we're here. So, it's 8:14. So I just want to create space. John is, yes, votersedge.org is, if you type that in, you can go ahead and look at your ballot. So even though you don't have your physical ballot right now, if you go to votersedge.org and then you put in your address, it will show you everything that's going to be on your ballot. And John actually linked it in the chat for you to click on it. And so now we want to, I think one of the things that we were going to do, I don't know if John said it, but I wanted to tell you guys what we're going to talk about next week, right? So next week is September 29th, and we're going to start talking about the propositions that are going to be on the ballot, and that's really important. So if you guys already are seeing, you should be seeing commercials, Prop 22, Prop 23. Oh, what does that mean? Email us now. Email us your questions that you have, because that's what we're going to be talking about. And then we're going to take a break on October 6th because John, I guess we're going to let him take his bar exam. I mean, I guess, right? So he's going to be taking the bar. So we're going to take a break, or maybe, I don't know, on October 6th. And then we're going to wrap up our series on October 13th with the bills and propositions, because that's going to be a lot to kind of digest. So what I want to do is just open it up for questions. And also, even if it's something we talked about in the first two lives, if you're still confused, don't hesitate to let us know. So I'm just going to look at John, look at the chat. Let us know if you have any questions right now or any comments. We value you guys' feedback. This is this was a dream that I had that John helped me execute. But if you feel like we could do something better, please tell us, or, tell us what you want more of or less of. All right. Are you guys still there? I see some of you guys online. Or did we just do such a great job at answering all your questions that you don't have any
questions?
Okay, John.
I pulled up the Voter's Edge site in case people didn't click on the link. They get to see what it looks like. You get to see the people. Now they've started adding their photos in.
Okay.
They probably have. When you click on them, you get to see all kinds of information about them. You can even mark a sample ballot, and it'll save it for you in case you decide, I really like this person.
Yeah, and fun fact, I actually was an intern during my senior year at California State University. I was an intern for Congressman Jerry McNerney. And so I interned in his office. I was a psycho that semester. I think I was taking like 21 units, working like 3 jobs. And then I also was an intern for Congressman McNerney. And he has an office right in Stockton. He also has an office in DC. So I, when constituents would write letters and things of that nature, voicing concerns, or they would make phone calls. A lot of people sometimes had problems with the embassy getting like passports and things of that nature. So they reached out to Congressman McNerney's office for assistance. I was probably one of I don't think any of you guys called, but I was one of the interns that took questions. And so the question is, what is the typical time session for the Assembly and the State Senate? So the Assembly is every 2 years and State Senate is 4 years.
Yeah, and if you're asking about the session for the legislature, it goes for 2 years, and so so the session for the legislature is every 2 years. So it starts with an odd number year and ends in an even number year. Each of those years is then broken down into a time frame. Basically, they start making laws and stuff in the springtime, and then they have a couple of resources. But then when September comes, they recess for the rest of the year. The bills are all done. Anything left over is on the governor's desk, and he has till the end of September to sign any laws that are going to be becoming laws. And then from November back to when they get signed in January, they're on a recess for winter. And so that basically happens every year. But things are a little more settled at the end of the 2 years. So like right now, things are very settled because to introduce new bills, they have to basically start the process over at writing a bill and putting it in. So they'll have a lot of work in the spring. They have a lot of time from now until then to do things like talk to constituents, plan out what they're going to do. Some representatives, they'll reach out to the community to basically get feedback like, how did I do and how am I doing and what laws would you like to see and things like that. And Jared asked, what do they do during recess? Or are they just off? That's kind of, it's a complicated question because in California, and this isn't something I mentioned, our legislatures are professional legislatures. So this is, presumably they're full-time jobs. They're paid rather well for it. In other states like Texas, it's a part-time gig. It's unpaid, I believe.
It's really low.
Yeah, and like they cover expenses, but nothing else. Our guys, this is their job, and it's not just their job. They have an entire office of people that work full-time, and it's not like you tell your staff, "Oh, you're not going to eat in November." No, they're going to be there. They're going to be working. And so it just kind of changes the pace for them when they're on recess of what they're doing. And it depends on the recess. Like right now, this recess is a break from pushing bills, dealing with bills, writing bills, and stuff like that. They still do all their constituent services stuff, so you can go to their office and say hi to them. You might have to wear a mask, but they're still doing things. And a lot of what the legislators themselves are going to do right now is go to their district offices in their district and be there to talk to community members, to talk to civic leaders, to really be present and also run for re-election.
And I was doing research this morning, and just to piggyback on what John said, in California, the legislators make about $111,000, and compare that to New Hampshire, where the legislators make only $200 per term. And so, they are, just to answer your question, the Facebook user says, yes, they're there for you, and you should be, I would tell you, if you are a concerned and engaged citizen, before you cast your vote, try giving them an office. Think about what things matter to you. Think about what things in the current climate of our country and our state, what are your personal morals or values and beliefs? What type of action on what type of matters do you want to see these elected officials make? And call them out. Call out the candidates that are running and they're telling you, oh, I'm going to do this. Ask them how. Ask them what the plan is. These are the type of things that, the 22% of people, I guarantee they're probably doing. But the larger demographic of people that don't have this information are not holding their elected officials accountable. They're not seeing what type of people they are, what type of staff members they hire, how they treat their constituents, right? And they're getting reelected, right? So yes, call them, ask them some questions, find out, fact check us, right? Find out. I have had the pleasure of having an experience with both Assemblymember Jim Cooper's office, his office manager, Mike Houthie. I've also had experiences with Congressman Jerry McNerney's office outside of being an intern. Back when Catherine Galgiano was I had experiences with her office as well, right? Because as a citizen, there were situations that came up where I wanted locally elected officials to take action. And so I interacted with the office. So that's my little soapbox. So, okay, guys, we love talking to you guys, but we're way over on time. As always, we want to thank you so much for your time. The one thing I'm going to do is say, if you haven't subscribed to the Voter Access YouTube video channel, please subscribe. We upload all of the videos there. John, also, there's some other great content available on the site, and we will be uploading more material on there. I also have my own YouTube site, but John, just go to Voter Access Project. Anyway, so, Jared, Mickey, Facebook user unanimous. We thank you guys. Again, if you have questions, email us, invite your friends, ask questions. But the biggest thing that I want to leave you guys with is what we said earlier. You have the knowledge now, right? You understand some things that you didn't know. So we encourage you to share. Share with your network, share on social media, share with your friends, empower others. Share this information because it is important, and make sure that your friends and your family members also are registered to vote and they have taken the census, because now you guys understand why this matters so much, right? Why it's so important and how it affects you personally. I said I wasn't going to be on a soapbox, but if you know me, I'm kind of always on a soapbox. So I'll say I won't lay on the soapbox. I'll just stand on it sometimes. So, John, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we close out?
No, thank you, Kim.
Thank you, guys. We can't wait to see you next week. And I'm out.